Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Shotade Olusegun. In today's video, we are going to dissect proving the signature of Almighty God in the universe. This topic is so fascinating, and we're going to actually dive deep into this particular topic. We're going to see how we can actually prove the signature of Almighty God. I've been saying that there is signature of Almighty God in the universe, and people are expecting me to prove this, and that is what we're going to do today. Now, there is one particular story that I used to illustrate the flipping of dimensions by saying that when you have an ant on a plain sheet of paper which is placed on the ground, that ant will not be able to cross the boundary in order to explore the other side that is placed on the floor, on that particular floor. So if we want the ant to explore the other side, then somebody of high intellectual, somebody of high somebody of intelligent mind will have to lift up that plain sheet of paper so that the ant can cross over to other side. And the moment that plain sheet of paper is being lifted up, then it means that the paper has transcended into the 3D realm. So now it takes only an intellectual mind to flip the paper. We need somebody that is so conscious of that to do so. So now, to that ant, the person might just be seen as a god. So if we're to use that narrative, if we're to use it in the universe, if we're to use it at the point of transition where we have this flipping, we know that the flipping comes right from the outside of that time energy wave interaction that symbolizes the entitle of the universe. But in this case, it symbolizes the entitle of the universe for the electron. So every object in the universe has its interpretation by extrapolation at universe level. So we can extrapolate the mechanism of every object in the universe in contribution to the universe at universe level. And so whatever it is they contribute, we have that shape of the universe. And so that is the whole thing. We can have universe inside universe, universe inside universe by every entity in the universe. So that is just the brief introduction, so as for us to have idea of what we're going to do in this video. So now, to nail it down practically such that you'll be able to understand it, we're going to use this time energy wave. Apart from using this time energy wave model, we're going to use this particular diagram. This diagram, we have to explain what time is. Well, basically, I want to quickly start with this diagram. Time is the same thing as wisdom and the same thing as instancy. Have that at the back of your mind. And so we have energy. Energy is the same thing as understanding and the same thing as infinity. So now we have mass worth. Mass worth is the same thing as knowledge, then the same thing as finite formation. So now, to start with time, well, I once gave a story concerning how time was able to be the king in the hierarchy of superiority, where you have time relating with energy in such a way that time, based on its nature of instancy, was able to capture the infinity nature of energy such that we have finite mass worth, where I have had that story. And so, I mean, I've once told that story. So now, what we're going to do here is that I'm going to explain time as wisdom, then as so now I'm going to explain time as wisdom, then as instancy. One thing about time being an epitome of wisdom is for the fact that when you have, by the time we look at the relationship of time to energy, we get to know that we can only get to understand something by time interval. You can't understand something at a very short time interval. Understanding will take a while before you could understand. It will take practice. It will take studying of that particular thing you want to understand, and then that will be based on interval of time. So it takes a while before one can actually understand something. And energy, based on the nature of its infinity, it actually spread across the entirety of, the cosmological space, in order to understand everything in the universe, just based on the narrative, the story that I told. So time, having the nature of instancy, that makes time to be invincible. And so, because of that nature of instancy, time, when we say something, when we say somebody is wise, wisdom has to do with precision. It has to do with precision. So, based on the nature of instancy, time is quick, very quick, and as a result of that, time is precise. And when you now have the relationship of time to energy, we are likely, not even likely, we are surely able to have a finite formation. And so the interaction of time to energy is what usually breeds mass worth. That is what usually breeds mass worth. So now I want us to look at the relationship right here. Here we have energy wave traveling inversely to time wave. Now, like I said, in the field, in time energy field, that we have suspension, which is inflationary suspension, and then we have neutron star suspension that we have inside the black hole. Now this portion, that is where we have only electromagnetic field here, and based on that intensity, the pressure and temperature, one cannot be conscious of anything in this state. So it is called unconscious state. And it is for this reason that when a child is born, that child can never get to know where he or she was coming from, let alone to know what he was destined to do on earth. And because we don't know our state before birth, and even at the birth, we cannot deny the fact that there is signature of Almighty God in the universe. So based on that, if we use that to explain this, we can see that even by expansion of time to energy, we then have incremental maturity of wisdom, which is huge time to low energy. And even in that, we have the incremental understanding. We have incremental understanding. So now, we can now get to see that there is a point in the life of a child that when the mother gets out of sight, the child might interpret that as mother will not come back. So you see them react to that kind of situation based on their perspective on that. So when the child now gets accustomed to mother coming back after going out of his or her sight, then he or she will be accustomed to the fact that out of sight doesn't mean out of life. You understand? So now we need to know that as child grows, they will get to be having more mature wisdom and understanding. So now, from that we can get to know that as the child grows, then the child will be having advanced wisdom, knowledge, and understanding. And from that we can get to know that consciousness gets to mature at a point in time where energy is low to wide time scale. And so we can see that right here. Wide time scaling relative to low energy gives rise to incremental maturity of wisdom, which is each time, and understanding ambient energy spread. So now we get to know that this central line is where we have reality. This central line, and we can see that time scale is so wide, and so here we have low energy state. So based on that, we can get to know that we have matured consciousness right here. So the positron, which is what we have outside, you can see the value is the same thing as the value of electron. So now this positron, the moment time is able to reconnect to this positron such that the positron is injected into system, that is when we now become conscious, because there must be a connection between this positron, which is outside the time energy wave model, and the classical mass worth. This is the classical mass worth. It is buried inside the arbitrary mass worth of the suspension we have here. This is the quantum arbitrary suspension. We can see that the real mass worth of electron, in this case positron, is outside. So now what I want us to know is that consciousness is not fundamental. Had it been consciousness is fundamental, any child that is born will be conscious of where he or she was coming from. And because they are not conscious of where they are coming from, it shows that consciousness is something that happens at every present interval in time peregrination. So it's something that comes it's something that comes from outside into the reality of time energy wave model. So we can see that it's a continuous process, and that is why it has that energy of vacuumized mass worth, and that makes us to be conscious at every present instance of our peregrination in time. So now we need to know that the signature of Almighty God is right at this point where we have the injection of positron into the system. So we are conscious at the moment that this positron mass worth is, injected into the system and in connection to the mass worth of classical realm. So the signature of Almighty God is the flipping mechanics to convert the infinity nature of electron to positron. Because now we have electron traveling to the low energy state, and is going to be another electron outside to make the trajectory balance, because at classical level the trajectory is balanced for in the sense that we have mass worth of the classical mass worth in relation to arbitrary mass worth. So now this suspension that we have, we shouldn't forget that this trajectory is being contracted. This trajectory is being contracted just as it has been widening in relation to time scaling. At the same time, it is being contracted. So that is why this expanding phase is so difficult to achieve the way I see it. So we can say that we have the signature of God in that sense. So now this region is where we have super conscious state. This region, because we have mass worth here, so we have gravitational field here, and this is the neutron suspension, neutron star suspension. So we have real mass worth here. So there is possibility for people that get vacuumed into the black hole for them to be conscious. So we have super conscious state right there. So now the warning we have is that you can only deny the fact that there is God's signature in the universe if you can get to know the happenings before and at your birth. If you can get to know the happenings before and at your birth, you can deny this fact. So now, then another thing we need to know is that the mass worth, that is the quantifiable measure, and it's a byproduct of time relativistic scaling to energy. That is mass worth. So now, here I said that mass worth is the same thing as knowledge, then finite formation. When there is a localized formation, that is when the universe itself can be conscious of that particular instantiation. So there must be an instantiation at one point to a relativistic point for such instantiation to be labeled. So what do I mean by that? Let's say if we have, like in dimension, if we have, let's say this is let's say this is the initial dimension, or let me rather use this. If we have 1 point here, the moment there is transition, there is momentum, there will be another inversely related point here. So it's until when we have these 2 points that we can now say this is evolutionary point and this is a future point. Or we can say this is evolutionary singularity and this is black hole singularity. But if we only have this, there is no way we can label this. We can't really identify this because there is no relativistic counterpart to it. So that is when you have instantiation of a worth, it becomes a knowledge, and that is why mass worth is a knowledge. And so once we have that instantiation relative to inversely related counterpart or inverse counterpart, then we can label the instantiation as necessary. So now the keynotes that we have here is that matured wisdom and understanding are dependent on wide time scaling. There is a gigantic being in a narrow structure that implements flipping mechanism. So this one, we can actually relate this to that narrative of the hands on a plain sheet of paper. So if we want the ant to explore the other side of the paper, then somebody that is, conscious and wise enough will have to lift up that paper from the ground so that the ant can cross the boundary and explore the other side. So now, because consciousness and wisdom, even understanding, they become mature in a spacious environment. That is why whatever we're going to have outside this system that can flip this system the way we have it will have to be something that has high intellect. So that is why I said there must be a gigantic being. And by saying that, I refer to Almighty God in this case. So now we can get to see the relationship as that is related to consciousness, to understanding, to knowledge. And based on that, and based on the maturity, even though we have narrow structure at quantum level, because that narrow structure cannot, accommodate the mass worth of positron. That is why we have the positron outside the system. And so the positron worth must be reconciled with the classical mass worth for us to be conscious. That is what I define as consciousness. And we can see that the outside system will definitely be wide enough to accommodate the mass worth. And we know that the moment that positron worth is injected into that narrow space, it will be unstable, and that will lead to decay, and that will propel momentum into the black hole, which is the singularity of the future. So basically, if I'm to go into, this is the particular formula, which is formula of everything that is used in getting all the values that we have. This is the quantum wave amplitude value. This is the remnant. It's more or less like the value toward the zero that we have to make us understand that the suspension at quantum level is very close to the 0 point. And so we substitute this quantum wave amplitude in the formula to get this particular value. Then the mass worth of electron, we put that in the place of this 2m to get this classical mass worth. So we use this, and this is the wave amplitude value at classical level. Now you can see that the triangle that we have is equilateral triangle. And how do we come about this triangle? I will just briefly explain this. By supplying this classical mass worth in the place of this 2m, we're going to have a suspension of this weak conveying value to the strong conveying value. And once we have that, this is the worth that suspends it. But this is not this is the worth that suspends it. And so we can draw the line. You can see that this is a linear solution. So we can draw the line from the singularity, or like this. We have positive value, and so it's going to be in the classical realm. So we have a suspension here. This is a constancy. This linear line that we have represent the constant value of gravity. So at the extreme end of that constancy, we are going to have convergence, and that is the arbitrary suspension. Now, to come from this arbitrary suspension down to the quantum realm, then we need to manually annihilate the suspended zeros. So the zeros, we manually annihilate that, and by annihilating that, we come straight down. Because we are annihilating zero, it's going to be instant. So we come straight down, then we realize that the trajectory is longer than what we should have here in respect to this value. If the value, and that is why you could say that this suspension value at quantum level is smaller to the mass worth value of electron. And there must be the flipping that we inject the mass worth of electron back to that arbitrary suspension. And once we have that, this trajectory will be linked to close the triangle. And so we can say we have this value as our trajectory here, this value as our trajectory. So it's the value that we're going to have here too will be combination of the positive and negative. It will still give us this same worth. And so we have a collateral triangle. So that is how the triangle is gotten. And for us to move into the black hole, the triangle has to be flipped. And it's until when this positron, because the moment we have electron, we also have another electron, which is more or less like an infinite entity. But the moment time travels from classical realm down to connect to this, based on the nature of time, which is instant, it will capture the infinity of the energy of electron. And by that radiation, there is going to be, just like Dirac said, and we're going to have positive charge, and then it becomes positron. And having such positive charge, that we inject it back into the system, then we have the momentum into the singularity of the future. So that explains and it proves the signature